Wind howled across the barren Wyoming plains, carrying dust and a faint promise of early snow. A single fluorescent bulb, straining to remain lit, buzzed at the entrance of the 24-hour gas station. As the dead of night pressed in from all sides, a lone figure stood behind the counter, fighting the tedium of the graveyard shift. His name was Will Townsend, a young man new to the region, who had chosen the night shift for its stillness, never imagining how far that stillness could reach. Will's station lay off a little used state highway, miles from the nearest sign of civilization. Truckers seldom ventured this far unless they made a wrong turn or were forced by an empty fuel tank. The overhead sign, once a bright neon swirl proclaiming all-night gas, had lost most of its letters, so that passers-by saw only Aney GS flickering in the gloom. The interior was as bleak as the desert outside. Rows of dusty snacks, bottled drinks, wiper fluid, and motor oil lined 4 narrow aisles. An ancient register perched on a laminate counter scarred by countless cigarette burns. The store radio sputtered top 40 hits through static, offering just enough noise to keep Will's mind from drifting too far. He often sat, half-slouched, behind the counter between midnight and dawn, reading battered paperback novels or tinkering with his phone, though the signal was perpetually 1 bar at best. But each night at exactly 2:17 a.m. the same stranger arrived. The first time Will noticed the time was purely incidental. He'd glanced at his watch out of boredom. The front door gave its telltale beep, and in stepped a man, tall and rail-thin, wearing faded jeans and a threadbare jacket. Light from the fluorescent overheads gave him a hollow look. Shadows pooled under his cheekbones. He seldom spoke beyond a polite nod, yet he never failed to arrive at 2:17 on the dot, as though guided by an unseen schedule. In those early weeks, Will had paid the man little mind. Sure, it was odd to see the same customer appear every night at the exact same moment, but it was Wyoming. Perhaps the man lived off a side road or was on some nightly job route. He always purchased the same item, a single folded map. The station stocked only 3 kinds of maps, one for the state highways, one for national parks, and one for scenic byways. This man took the same scenic byways map every night, paid an exact change, then left. No small talk, no wasted words. Will tried to press him once. "Hey, you realize that's the same map you got yesterday, right?" The man nodded, placed the money on the counter without responding, then walked out into the cold. After that, Will stopped asking. Some folks were just eccentric. However, over time, the strangeness built. For one, the station never seemed to run out of that map. Will expected that after a month of the same purchase, the scenic byways map would be depleted. But whenever he checked the rack, there they were, always the same handful, as if replaced by an invisible restocker. And the man's routine never changed. 2:17, beep of the door, footsteps to the rack, footsteps to the counter, exact change, and out again. Late autumn came to Wyoming, bringing punishing winds across the plains. Will found himself more isolated than ever. The manager, an older fellow named Bert, rarely visited after midnight, trusting Will to handle the minimal traffic. Truckers who did arrive sometimes complained about the roads. They'd buy coffee, chat for a moment, then depart, leaving Will alone in the fluorescent cocoon of the gas station. On nights with no traffic at all, Will's thoughts drifted. He found himself waiting for that door beep at 2:17, some strange comfort in the pattern. But the comfort was tinged with dread. Each time the door slid open and the man entered, Will couldn't help noticing new details. How the man's eyes never quite reflected the light, how he moved with a stiff gait, how his breath fogged in the cold even inside the station, which was kept warm. One night, curiosity got the better of Will. As 2:17 approached, he found an excuse to stand near the map's display. He pretended to be straightening them, but in truth, he was checking the quantity. He counted exactly 10 scenic byways maps in stock. Moments later, the beep rang out and the man's footsteps approached. Will turned, heart pounding. "Evening," Will managed. The man nodded. He reached past Will's shoulder, picked up a map, then turned toward the register. Will blinked, eyes snapping back to the display. Still 10 copies remained. Yet the man clearly held one in his hand. It was as though the map had duplicated or never left the rack in the first place. His mouth went dry. He followed the man to the counter. The stranger set the map down, along with 175. Will's mind whirled. He rang it up automatically, dropping the coins in the register. When he looked back, the man was already gone, the front door drifting shut behind him. Outside, the wind swirled dust under the flickering overhead lamp. Shaken, Will stepped out from behind the counter, glancing at the door. The night seemed too dark, as if it swallowed everything past the station's meager lights. For a moment he thought he glimpsed the man's silhouette in the distance, far too quickly, as if he'd travelled 100 yards in seconds. Then, the silhouette vanished. The bizarre duplication of the map fueled Will's obsession. He needed answers. That weekend, with the station nearly empty, he decided to review the security footage. The manager's office had an older system, battered monitors and cables snaking everywhere. Will closed the door behind him, found the relevant timestamps, and started scrubbing through the black and white recordings. He jumped to 2:17 a.m. from the previous night. The camera angle showed the interior aisles, the counter, the door in the background. Sure enough, at 2:17, Will saw himself behind the register. He saw the door beep, but it didn't open visibly. Instead, the feed showed a slight flicker at the entrance, as if the system hiccuped. Will then watched himself ring up a sale, scanning the item, the map, with the handheld barcode reader. But the camera revealed no one on the other side of the counter, no figure, no shape. Worse yet, the recording displayed the following. The map simply rose from the rack, floating in mid-air, drifted to the counter, then landed. Coins materialized from nothing. Will was there, obviously speaking to someone, but the camera captured only empty space. He rewound multiple times, verifying it wasn't a glitch. The timestamps were consistent, the angles unobstructed, yet there was no sign of the man's presence. The door never physically opened, though in real life it certainly beeped. His hands clammy, Will fast-forwarded to nights prior. Every single time at 2:17, the feed cut to that faint static flicker, then showed the map lifting off the display, a few coins clinking onto the countertop. And each time he saw himself interacting with nothing. A chill ran down Will's spine. Was he hallucinating the man's form, or was the camera failing to capture it? Either possibility was terrifying. He copied a snippet of the footage onto a thumb drive, intending to show Bert or maybe a friend. Yet a gnawing fear told him that no one would believe him, and something inside him whispered that the act of sharing might anger whatever this presence was. In the nights that followed, Will watched the clock with dread. Always 2:17, always the beep, always the same transaction. The man never lingered, never said a word beyond a nod. Will forced small talk once in a while, but the man only stared, eyes dark as coal. The sense of an otherworldly force pressed around them, making Will's ears ring. The repetition weighed on him, messing with his sleep. When day broke, Will would return to his trailer half a mile down a dirt road and collapse into fitful dreams about shadowy figures crossing endless highways. He rarely left his isolated routine, only going into the nearest town for groceries or the library. Even so, he found no explanation for the nightly phenomenon. A sliver of hope arrived when, about a month into his discovery of the security footage, the man spoke very briefly. That night, Will was on edge, half dreading 2:17. When the beep sounded, his stomach flipped. The tall figure approached as usual, pulling a scenic byways map from the rack. This time the man paused at the counter before placing the money down. Will found himself blurting, "Look, I know this is weird, but why do you need so many of those maps?" He expected silence. Instead, the man's eyes flicked up, meeting Will's. His lips parted. In a voice that seemed unused to speech, he said, "They're incomplete." Will blinked. The man placed a crumpled dollar bill on the counter. "I must find the right roads," he added, so quiet that Will had to lean forward to hear. The next instant, he was gone, slipping out the door. It beeped, letting in a burst of cold wind. Will rushed out from behind the counter, but by the time he reached the parking lot, the man was nowhere to be seen. The highway lay empty, the darkness unbroken. Not even tire tracks marked the gravel. "I must find the right roads," Will repeated under his breath, heart pounding. The phrase haunted him all night. Something about it felt desperately urgent, as though the man was locked in a struggle to locate a place that didn't want to be found. The next day, Will examined the station's map rack. As usual, the scenic byways stack was at full count. He pulled one out, unfolding it carefully. It showed the region's highways, dirt roads, mountain passes, and national park routes. A bright red line indicated scenic routes with possible overlooks. Everything looked mundane. He pulled another map identical, or so it seemed. Laying them side by side, he tried to spot differences. Each topographical shading, each text label, matched. Yet as he ran his fingers over them, a creeping sensation formed. Perhaps the man saw something else in these lines, something beyond normal sight. He stared until his vision blurred. Finally, he folded them up and replaced them. On a whim, he brought one copy to the manager's office and scanned it under the old photocopier, hoping a digital file might reveal anomalies. The scan turned out normal, no hidden messages or odd silhouettes. Yet the sense of the uncanny lingered, as if the man sensed Will's curiosity. The nightly encounters took a more unsettling turn. At 2:17 a.m., one stormy night rain lashing the windows, thunder rumbling. The man appeared as usual. He placed the map and exact change on the counter. But before leaving he paused, lips twisting as though to speak. The overhead lights flickered ominously. Will braced himself, adrenaline surging. "Sir," he ventured. The man's voice emerged, raspy, echoing in the near-empty station. Almost got it. The turn is always missing." Then he turned sharply, his jacket brushing a display of candy bars, and strode out into the rain. Will followed, stepping onto the wet pavement. "Wait, missing turn. Where are you trying to go?" Lightning flashed, revealing the deserted pumps, the swirling sheets of rain. The man was gone. All that remained was the faint patter of water on concrete. Strangely, there weren't even footprints leading away. Will shuddered, returning inside. That night, the phrase, "the turn is always missing," replayed in his mind like a broken record. He pictured the scenic byways map, dozens of roads weaving across the state. Could there be a hidden route that defied normal cartography? Desperate, Will decided to show the bizarre security footage to his co-worker Sam, a part-timer who occasionally covered the shift after 6 a.m. Sam was the only person Will trusted not to dismiss him outright. They both had an interest in local folklore, often swapping ghost stories during shift changes. One early morning after the man's visit, Will played the footage for Sam. Sam watched in silence, eyes widening as the map floated off the rack and coins clattered onto the counter with no visible source. Meanwhile, the video showed Will acting as though a customer were there, scanning the item. Sam whistled. "Jesus, that's legit creepy. No camera glitch could do this. You sure you didn't stage it?" Will's trembling voice betrayed his sincerity. "Sam, I see him. He's real to me. Tall guy, old jacket. But the camera never picks him up." Sam frowned, shutting off the monitor. "So what do we do?" Will rubbed his temples. "He keeps talking about a missing turn, needing the right roads. He always buys the same map. I feel like maybe he's stuck or lost. I know it sounds insane." Sam nodded slowly. "Let me come by tonight around 2 a.m. I'll hang out in my car. If he's real, I'll see him show up. If not, maybe we figure out it's something else." Relief washed over Will. "Thanks." That night, the wind had dropped, leaving a quiet hush over the plains. Sam parked his beat-up sedan behind the station, out of direct sight, but with advantage of the front door. Will worked inside as usual, heart racing whenever he checked the clock. 2:15–2:16. He took deep breaths, bracing for the beep. At 2:17, the beep sounded. The door swung open, and in walked the man, face pinched in that familiar haunted look. Will's stomach clenched, but he forced a steady demeanor, scanning the items out of reflex. The man headed straight for the map rack. Meanwhile, out back, Sam peered through his windshield, expecting to see the door open or the silhouette of someone stepping inside. Instead, he saw nothing. No movement, no figure. Just the station's lights. Inside, the man placed the map on the counter, rummaged in his pocket for change. Will's voice trembled. "Sir, I have a co-worker outside. We can help you find this turn if you want." He can drive you, or get you help. Just say the word." The man paused, tilting his head. For the first time, Will noticed a faint quiver in the man's eyes, like fear. Then the man dropped the coins. They clattered on the counter, echoing in the stillness. Outside, Sam saw no one through the window, yet he distinctly heard the clink of coins when Will opened the door to call, "Sam, you seeing this?" Sam hopped out, rounding the corner. "There's no one, Will. The door didn't open." "Are you sure?" His words died as inside, the man's gaze snapped to the window. Will followed that stare, blood going cold. The man's expression was angry, or was it desperate? A flicker of motion, and he rushed to the glass. Sam froze outside, feeling a chill run through him. He sees me, but I can't see him. In a flash, the overhead fluorescence popped, plunging the station into near darkness. Will yelped, fumbling for his phone's flashlight. By the time he turned it on, the man was gone. The front door beeped again, letting a gust of cold air swirl inside. Sam burst in, shining his own flashlight around. What the hell happened? Shaken, Will could only pant. He was right here. He looked at you like you were an intruder. Sam's face paled. But I saw nothing. The door never moved. All I heard was the beep. Then the lights went nuts. They stood there, hearts thumping, scanning the darkness. Eventually, Sam found the circuit breaker in the back and restored the fluorescence. Under their harsh glow, the station looked normal, except for a single scenic byways map on the counter and a handful of coins. The receipt tape read 2:17 a.m., one item, 175. In the aftermath, Sam and Will huddled in the staff room, hashing out theories. A ghost? A time loop? A dimensional glitch? Every explanation felt outlandish, but the evidence was undeniable. Sam sighed. He keeps mentioning a missing turn, right? Maybe we should look at the region's roads more closely. They fetched every map from the station. Highways, local roads, scenic routes. Sam opened them on the floor, comparing lines, cross-referencing with the man's odd remarks. Will recalled how the man said, "It's incomplete," implying the printed roads were missing something. 3 hours later, as dawn approached, Sam squinted at the scenic byways map and pointed to an unlabeled stretch near an old ghost town. "This area's weird. The official highway map marks a county road leading through these hills, but the scenic map doesn't show it. Could that be the missing turn he's referencing?" Will leaned in. Sure enough, the official highway map had a tiny road hooking north around a ridge, while the scenic byways map ended abruptly. The area was rumored to be unstable, prone to rock slides, so maybe it was closed. But the man's repeated phrase, "The turn is always missing," echoed in Will's head. "Let's drive out there tomorrow," Will said, voice hushed. "Check if there's an actual path." The following afternoon, Will and Sam closed the station for a few hours. Bert wouldn't be pleased, but they needed answers. They followed the highway for an hour north, then veered onto a dusty back road leading into scraggly foothills. The land grew more desolate with each mile, the sky heavy with clouds threatening a storm. At last, they reached a fork unmarked by signage. One branch wound west, matching the scenic route. The other, partially overgrown with weeds, headed north into a narrow pass. A battered, "Road closed" sign lay toppled at the roadside, rusted beyond readability. Sam hopped out of the car. This must be it. The missing turn. The pass was choked with debris-fallen rocks, branches. Yet the road appeared passable on foot. They decided to hike a short distance, curiosity overriding caution. The silence pressed on them, no birds or insects stirring. After about half a mile, the pass opened into a small valley. An old cabin's remains stood near a dried creek bed, just rotted wood beams and a collapsing roof. The place felt ancient, older than any documented settlement. A biting wind whipped dust across their faces. Suddenly, Will's phone buzzed, a text from Bert. "Where are you? Station's locked. Need you now." Anxiety gnawed at him. They had to wrap up quickly. As they turned to go, Sam froze. "Look." He pointed at the far side of the valley. A faint path, winding deeper into rocky terrain. Something about it shimmered in the afternoon light, as though the distance was warped. Will rubbed his eyes, and the shimmer vanished. Possibly a heat mirage. He and Sam shared a look. Is this what the man is searching for? A path that refused to appear on maps existing in some liminal zone? A spike of unease prodded Will. We should get back before dark. They returned to the station in silence, heads spinning with more questions than answers. That night, Will returned to his shift, nerves jangling. Sam had to depart early, leaving Will alone. Midnight crawled by. Then 1 a.m. The emptiness felt oppressive. Through the station window, the highway lay deserted under a moonless sky. At 2:17 a.m., the beep sounded. Will's breath caught. The man entered, same stiff posture, same haunted eyes. He placed the map on the counter, rummaging in his jacket pocket for change. Will swallowed, summoning courage. I found that turn, he stammered. Up north, near the ghost town. Is that where you're trying to go? The words trembled from his lips, half expecting no response. But the man's eyes sparked with something: hope, fear. His voice emerged like a whisper of static. Yes, but it's not there yet. The road moves. Will shuddered. Moves? The man nodded once, then slowly took back the coins he'd intended to pay. His hand hovered over the map. For a moment, Will thought he might tear it open and point. Instead, the man's face twisted in frustration. Always behind me, never where I need it. He let the coins drop again, clinking on the counter. Then he stepped away. Will's heart lurched. He didn't want the man to vanish this time. Wait, he called. We can help you. There's a co-worker. Sam, he saw the missing turn with me. The man's lips parted. He almost formed words, but something in his gaze hardened. As if forced by an invisible tether, he strode to the door. The beep, a rush of wind, and he was gone. Outside, the darkness yielded no sign of him. Once again, no footprints, no hint of a vehicle. Determined to glean more, Will re-examined the security footage of that encounter. As always, the man didn't show up on camera. The map rose by itself, the coins appeared from thin air. But this time something new caught Will's eye. At the moment the man took back his coins, the camera glitched, and a shape flickered in the reflection of the station window. A patch of swirling darkness, outlined vaguely like a face. Will replayed it in slow motion, pulse racing. The shape hovered behind him in the reflection, overshadowing the man's invisible form. Could it be that someone, or something, was controlling him? Events came to a head on a particularly bitter night. Icy gusts rattled the station's windows, and the neon sign threatened to short out entirely. Will dreaded 2:17, yet a certain resignation steadied him. Something told him that tonight would be different, an ending, for better or worse. When the beep finally came, Will turned to see the man at the threshold, but he did not approach the maps. Instead, he stood just inside the doorway, jacket fluttering as if stirred by an unseen wind. His gaze locked onto Will with an intensity that made the clerk's hair stand on end. Slowly, the man lifted his hand and pointed outside. His mouth moved, forming words Will could barely hear. I need directions. A thunderous jolt shook the station's electricity. The lights flickered, then steadied. Will's pulse hammered. Directions to where? He managed. The man's voice rasped. To the place that changes, the road that shifts, the missing turn. Help me see it. Will recalled the shimmering path in that remote valley. He licked his lips, stepping out from behind the counter. I know where it is. I can take you, he said, though dread gripped him. Outside, the wind howled, and the darkness felt alive. The man nodded once, still pointing. Will unlatched the station door, stepping into the cold. The man followed, though Will couldn't sense his footsteps or breath. If not for the corner of Will's eye catching the man's shape, he might doubt it entirely. He reached his old pickup truck. We'll drive, he said uncertainly, opening the driver's side. The passenger door remained shut, yet Will felt a weight settle next to him, as if the man had slipped inside without opening the door. Shivers racked Will's body. He started the engine, headlights cutting a feeble cone through the swirling dust. Without checking for oncoming traffic, He pulled onto the highway. The entire scene felt dreamlike or nightmarish. They drove in silence. The clock on the dash read 2:47, but Will could have sworn they travelled for hours. Finally, the turnoff came into view, a battered side road that led to the ghost town valley. The truck bumped over potholes, headlights illuminating shrubs and tumbleweeds. A sense of being watched by more than the man overcame Will. The night pressed in, brimming with unseen shapes. He swallowed hard, forging ahead. The cabin ruins appeared in the headlights, and beyond them, the slope leading to that hidden path. Braking near the collapsed structure, Will cut the engine. Is this where you need to go? The man's voice murmured from the passenger seat. Further. The path. Will turned, expecting to see those dark eyes, but the seat was empty, yet he felt the man's presence behind him, like a cold, static-laced vacuum. Gripping a flashlight, Will trudged across the brittle ground, the man's shape flitting at the edges of his vision. They reached the valley's mouth, where a faint trail twisted between jagged rocks. The moon peeked through clouds, giving enough light to see the path continuing deeper than Will had realized. He hesitated. I can't see well. My flashlight's dying. The beam flickered, revealing stunted plants and broken stones. Ahead, the man paused. He turned to Will, face half lit by moonlight, revealing a gaunt expression like a restless spirit. Please, he whispered, show me the way. I can't find it alone. Heart pounding, Will took a step forward. The path twisted, then parted, as though shifting under his gaze. With each step, the ground felt less real, and the air grew colder, stinging his lungs. He could sense the man behind him, still invisible to normal sight, but undeniably there. Minutes or hours passed, time losing all meaning. Eventually they rounded a corner to find a clearing. The land ended abruptly, as if cut away by a giant blade, revealing a yawning chasm. At the chasm's far side rose a black, craggy cliff face riddled with peculiar glowing lines like veins of molten rock. Though cold to the touch, Will's breath caught. This place was wrong, as if it belonged to another dimension entirely. The man stepped forward, now fully visible to Will's eyes, tall, trembling eyes, full of desperate longing. It's here, he said, voice trembling. The road to go beyond. But I can't cross alone. With that, he extended a hand. Will stared, heart hammering in terror. Something told him that stepping across that gap meant leaving the world he knew. The lines glowed softly, beckoning. Will considered fleeing, returning to the truck, forgetting all of this. But the man's haunted expression lingered in his mind, the nights of repetitive map buying, searching for a turn that eluded normal maps. If this man was truly trapped, maybe leading him here was the only way to free them both from the nightly cycle. Summoning courage, Will took the outstretched hand. An icy surge flowed through him. The man's grip felt both real and intangible, like pressing his hand through cold mist. Together they faced the edge. The chasm flickered with swirling shadows. Before Will could blink, the cliff face parted, forming a slender bridge, no more than a few feet wide, barely substantial. Will's flashlight flickered off entirely, leaving only the ghostly glow from the strange lines to illuminate their path. Step by step they inched across, the chasm yawning beneath them. Will dared not look down. Adrenaline and dread spurred him on. At the far side, the black rock parted into a jagged corridor. The man's hand squeezed Will's once, as though in gratitude, then released. He moved ahead into the corridor, turning back to look at Will. His face glowed faintly in the gloom, no longer shadowed by confusion. He mouthed 2 words, though no sound emerged. Thank you. Then the corridor swallowed him. The lines dimmed, the path crumbled behind him. Panicking, Will tried to follow, but the rock sealed as if it had never opened, leaving only a smooth cliff face. Darkness enveloped him. The chasm began to fade. With a sudden lurch, he felt himself falling, as if the ground dissolved under his feet. He screamed, arms flailing, the wind rushing past his ears. He awoke slumped in the driver's seat of his pickup, parked at the gas station. Dawn light streamed across the horizon, painting the highway in pale gold. His breath came in ragged gasps, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. A dream. His heart thudded, trying to piece together reality. Looking around, the station's parking lot was empty. No sign of footprints or a second occupant. He checked the time, 6:12 a.m. His shift had ended. Confused, he stumbled inside. Bert stood behind the counter, scowling. "Where have you been, Will? I show up at 6 and you're nowhere, but your truck's outside." Will opened his mouth, uncertain what to say. Memory of that surreal journey hammered his brain. "I might have dozed off in the truck," he managed. Bert gave him a perplexed once-over. "You sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Will forced a nod. "Yeah, I need some sleep. Sorry about that." Without further ado, he clocked out and returned to the truck. Exhaustion weighed on him, mind reeling with half-coherent images of a hidden chasm and glowing lines. Yet a strange calm crept in. Maybe it's done, he thought. Maybe the man found his missing road. Before leaving, though, Will crept into the manager's office to check the security footage for 2:17 a.m. Bert was busy restocking shelves, oblivious to Will's presence. He queued up the feed. At 2:17, the station's interior was visible. No beep, no open door. The camera showed only emptiness, though Will's own figure flickered near the counter. He then saw himself walk to the front door and vanish from camera range like he'd stepped outside. The clock advanced to 6 a.m. in a jump, the store otherwise still. No sign of the man. No sign of the bizarre departure. It was as if the entire night had passed in a blink. The only evidence of something amiss was Will's own brief disappearance. Heart pounding, he clicked out of the footage. Enough. He had to get out of there. Weeks passed. Each time Will worked a night shift, 2:17 a.m. came and went with no beep, no strange man. The scenic byway's map stayed neatly in place, no longer vanishing. It was as if that piece of his life ended, sealed away behind an invisible wall. Sometimes, though, late at night, he'd stand behind the counter and gaze out at the moonlit highway, half expecting to see a silhouette in the distance. But the man never reappeared. In the hush of the gas station, only the quiet drone of the radio and the occasional sigh of the wind kept him company. Sam asked once, "Did you guys ever figure out that missing turn?" Will shook his head, offering a tired grin. "I think it got found," was all he said. Sam didn't press. One cloudy evening, Will's shift ended early. Driving back to his trailer, he felt an inexplicable urge to take that dusty northbound route. He resisted, eventually turning onto a different road. Some instincts are best left untested. He never again saw the door beep at 2:17 for the last customer, but in fleeting moments just on the edge of sleep he recalled the man's final words, "I need directions." And Will, guiding him to that hidden place beyond mortal maps. When the memory rose, Will felt a strange mix of dread and peace. He hoped that wherever the man had gone, across that crumbling bridge, deeper into the realm of shifting roads, he finally found what he needed.